Like, I am the one who's being useful. I'm the one who's putting in the effort. Why is no one rewarding my productivity by paying attention to me? Why is no one taking care of me when I'm succeeding by society's metrics? I am being productive. Well, the problem is, the more competent you are, the less useful other people can be and feel around you. And unconsciously, that becomes a problem. Because if I can't take care of you and I'm your boss and I don't know how to help you because you've already got it, I no longer have a purpose in what I view as a transactional relationship with you. So because interacting with you feels literally purposeless to me, because I value helping people bridge the gap from 0 to 100, if I perceive you as already being at 100, I no longer derive a sense of unconscious feeling of being helpful towards you. This is why I, as your boss, am going to dedicate my energy towards trying to fix a problem. And the problem is not you. How do you deal with the problem of being so competent that you are no longer taken care of? We're going to unpack how your self-worth got hijacked by productivity and how to reclaim your power and freedom without setting everything on fire. Welcome to What the Hélène, where we explore the journey from high-functioning burnout to full embodied freedom. For ambitious rebels who have outgrown the hustle, I'm Hélène Kaniak, your guide in reclaiming your personal power, your confidence, and your voice without burning out or burning it all down. Here we're going to challenge the commodification of suffering, embrace the revolutionary act of pleasure, and dismantle the systems that have suppressed your self-trust. Join me as we navigate the unlearning curve, redefine success, and cultivate a life that speaks for itself. Let's get started. So this episode is in response to a question I got from a dear friend who asked me for advice on how to manage up. Right? Her boss had just assigned her an additional task, even though it wasn't her responsibility and not really in her job description. So this got me thinking, and frankly, I recorded a lot of this in a voice memo in the bathtub. So if you see me reading, it's because I transcribed that voice memo so that I could have clear audio of my unconscious thoughts for you to experience. So as I was thinking about it, I realized that managing up is not just a work issue, right? As this podcast is wont to do, I'm always going to zoom out a little bit and look at how the systems that we have in society, the things that we have subscribed to either consciously or culturally, those little social contracts that we've bargained in, that those things impact our day-to-day life. And in this case, the reason we need to manage up and why your competence is being punished, as it were, is because we still live in a society where we see self-worth as tethered to our productivity. We live in a world where people are viewed as their capacity, where we're judging others based on how our ability to cope and handle things and manage things all on our own is valued and rewarded. We reward people for how well they can overcome challenges, how much they can navigate without asking for help. And we give awards for this. We literally award people for their strife and their struggle, right? I mean, I spent 8 years active duty in the military, but every award that's ever given, the greater the tragedy, the more you had to suffer to survive, the greater that award, right? With the ultimate award being something that is awarded posthumously. So think of that from a cultural societal perspective, where we try to reward people for how much they are actively struggling, working against the grind, how much they sacrifice, right? So in society, we naturally are wont to do that. Whether that's due to collective guilt or social shame, I'm gonna put a pin in that and maybe save it for another episode, because we're still gonna contextualize this into working day in, day out at your office. And now your boss has assigned you a task. So maybe you're someone who excels at what you do. And I bet you do. I bet if you're listening to this podcast, it's because you know you're good at your job. Maybe you don't give yourself enough credit for how good you are at your job. But more importantly, you're realizing that the job that you're good at is not necessarily your entire life, or you don't want it to be. There are other things in life that are just as important to you, and hopefully more important to you than the work you put in between 9 and 5. And so, because you're excelling at your job, you might find yourself, like my friend was, in a situation where your boss is probably going to assign you more work to do, not less. Right? There's this tendency where when we're hyper competent, we become the person that ends up taking everything on. The additional projects, taking notes at the meeting, being asked to help and mentor other people in our workplace and step up, even if we're not being given the proper title, the added promotional bonus that would come with that. And we're not usually going to get the credit for all this extra work that we're putting on, because people are perceiving our capacity as greater because we are producing so efficiently, right? So we tend to assume that people's capability is tied to their capacity, meaning you are able to get this done because you must have all of this time, you must have all of these resources, you must have all this availability to get this done. And the first thing I'd like for you to realize and to really internalize is that our capability is not the same as our capacity. You are capable of so much. We as human beings are capable of so much, of enduring, of resilience, of persisting. We're capable of empathy. We're capable of grace and forgiveness and creation and beauty and art. And we do not have the capacity for all of those things that we want to do, all of those things that we're capable of doing. So when we're talking about how do we manage up, how do we grab hold of the reins that have been tethered to our bit in the society where we're valuing nothing but our productivity, we have to realize that, one, that cannot be the thing that we value and tether our self-worth to. Two, even if I can, doesn't mean that I ought to. Not because it's immoral, right? It's not just because you can, doesn't mean you should. But in this case, it's just because I'm capable doesn't mean I have the capacity for it. And so the need to manage up comes in when you start recognizing, oh, while I am capable, and I might be the most capable person in the office, I do not have the capacity. It is not in my best interest. It is not aligned with my purpose. It is not aligned with my goals at work or outside of work to burn myself out trying to do more than what I signed up for. Right? And it's not because I lack initiative. It's not because I'm not a team player. It's because I recognize that if I give too much of myself because someone else cannot see what I see in my own life, because I've not communicated my capacity accurately, I get to take ownership of the fact that if I keep giving too much of myself, not only am I going to burn out and be the worst team player, but I'm going to be apathetic. I'm going to start resenting my boss. I might be the snippiest person. But even from an altruistic perspective, if you take on and keep letting people think that you are the one who is the most capable, the only one who can handle it with the most capacity, the other people in the office and in your life are not getting the opportunity to grow in their capability, to grow in their capacity, right? So it's not even a matter of, oh, it's unfair. It's genuinely an improper distribution of resources. And that resource is the chance to grow, to improve, and to be a team collaborator. It's like the group project where one person does all the work. If that one person stops doing the work, they might get the criticism of, well, you're not being a team player. Excuse me, by doing all of the work, they're actually being the worst kind of team player because they are hogging all of the opportunity for success, for productivity, for resources, right? So I'm not trying to say this is your fault. I'm trying to speak to the part of you that might be thinking, oh, well, I'll feel guilty, right? That people-pleasing part that thinks, well, someone's got to do it. And if I don't do it, it's all going to fall apart. And this is the hard part about this. Sometimes in life, you have to let things fall apart. You do. It is not your job in this life to hold everything together. You are not the glue that keeps the cosmos spinning. And if you were to really think that in every area of your life, one, I would hope that you treat that glue with a lot of grace, compassion, and tenderness. Because if you're putting all this expectation on yourself that you have to hold it all, handle it all, and be the one to prevent disaster at work or in your home life or on a global scale, if you're putting on that much responsibility and expectation, then you would expect to treat the person with that much expectation and responsibility with the highest respect, with giving them all of the resources you can possibly manage, taking care of that one person if they were really in charge of the whole world not falling apart. The problem is we don't do that. We give ourselves all of the expectation of holding it all together with none of the resources that would actually be required of someone doing that much. So you're expecting a whole lot more of yourself than what you have the capacity for. And the reason you don't have the capacity for it is because, one, it's not your fucking job. But two, you are a multifaceted person. You don't want all your eggs in one basket. And we as human beings, we live, we move, we breathe in cycles, in seasons. It's like asking my garden to be in bloom all year round. I can't ask one plant to bloom all year round. That's not how plants work. They gather the resources from the soil, they bring it up, they flower, and then eventually those petals have to fall down, not because it's depriving me of the beauty and the joy that I spent my hard-earned dirty pants investing in. I spent all my time and effort getting dirty in that garden, not so it could bloom, but so that it could live. I don't garden for the flower. I garden for the experience of keeping something alive and watching it grow through all of its phases. And in this case, the reason the blooms fall off is so that the seeds can be sown again. And so that next year we get another bloom. And maybe every year that plant gets a little bit fuller, it starts spreading its seeds, it grows in its capacity to bloom, but it can only do so for a short amount of time. And we as human beings, like other creatures of this nature that we are a part of, have to acknowledge that we do not get to bloom all year round, all the time. We do not get to perform at 100% in every area of life all of the time, right? So before I get into the how do we manage up, I want to give the gentle reality check that what is being expected of you, not just from your boss possibly, but what you are expecting of yourself is the thing that is unfair. It is unfair because it is not taking into consideration your capacity. It is not taking into consideration that you have a holistic life to live and that you are also, more importantly, allowed to not be productive and still feel worthy. So back in the real world, we've accepted that if you're really good at your job, your boss is probably going to assign you more work to do, right? But ironically, they are also less likely to take care of you. They're less likely to maybe look out for you or support you or take things off your plate because they view you as capable of handling it all, of not needing help, right? This is true of the strong one in any trope, in any friendship or relationship, but this is especially true at work. Because a person who's going to get things taken off their plate and is going to get the extra attention and the extra support is a person who is not performing to the level that you are. And it might be the person that the boss is unconsciously pitying and also is deriving a sense of satisfaction from having to support. Let me explain. So there's this incentive for the boss. It's probably all unconscious. I'm going to paint bold strokes for bold folks here, right? And we're going to talk about why is there an incentive for your boss to not only not support you and not put his resources towards you, but actually put all those resources, time, and energy towards the person or the employees who are struggling. We have to start with this understanding that we as human beings, in a world especially where we are tied to what we can do for the world, what we can produce, what we can contribute, there is this incentive, this unconscious desire for us to be helpful. Not only to be helpful, but to be seen and perceived as helpful, right? And useful. We want to be useful. We want to be helpful because God forbid I live my life and waste my potential, right? When I work with my clients and work with them one-on-one, when we first dig into what is the root of why they're feeling the way they're feeling, why they're feeling not confident, what's keeping them from taking certain risks, there usually comes up this fear, pretty unconscious, that I want my life to feel useful. I don't want to waste my life. I don't want to waste my potential. And because of that, I put this pressure on myself to be a good person, to be the best I can be, to succeed, to achieve, to perform. And anytime I don't do that, I feel like a failure. And while I work with my clients to kind of redefine failure, redefine success so that it isn't just tied to our potential, but is tied to our innate qualities and characteristics, in reality, most of us, especially most of us who aren't working with me or another certified coach or therapist, are going to go through life unconscious of the fact that we are desperate to feel useful and helpful and productive in society. Very unconsciously, that is going to impact how we interact with other people and how we view our relationships. We are more likely to view our relationships as transactional, meaning what I do for you, I expect you to do for me. This is why we build relationships that might be a little codependent. We might build relationships that we ultimately resent, especially if you feel like you're the friend who's always there, always showing up for other people. It creates relationships where you start keeping score of who's done what for whom, right? How have I supported you and how have you supported me? And do these two things equate? How do things stack up? I called you twice this month. You only called me once in the last 6 months. This friendship feels uneven. But it doesn't really look at the larger holistic definition of what is that friendship. Because we unconsciously want to be helpful, productive in all circumstances, including those relationships, even if we build up resentment, whether it's towards our boyfriend, towards our best friend, towards our boss, we are still choosing to keep giving, to keep over-delivering, right? So there's an element of ownership that we have to take in choosing to say, hey, I'm doing this because I want to be perceived as helpful. Now, you as the employee being overtasked by your boss, get to own that. Yet, your boss unconsciously is also trying to do the same thing. And as a manager, he's going to think that he is acting like a benevolent, useful God by cutting slack for the person who performs less well and spending more time managing their less competent performer than managing the person who already has their act together. So think of it this way. We are addicted as a society to a before and after picture. If you've ever scrolled through social media or looked at a commercial for more than 10 seconds, we love to see a before and after, right? Whether we're talking about weight loss, hair gain, whether we're talking about a garden or a home renovation, we love to see a before and after picture. That's because our minds are constantly looking for the gap, the delta, the change from A to B. And so we love to see the start and the finish, and the greater distance you can create between the start and the finish, the more valuable that finish, right? That's what we tell ourselves in a society when we reward the destination, when we reward the struggle, right? The more you had to overcome, the bigger that gap, the more accolades you're going to give yourself in your head, the more accolades society is going to give you. So think of where you are and how highly you're performing, and think of the other employee who's maybe performing more poorly, who maybe is not handling their capacity as well or has stronger boundaries, who knows? But this person who's underperforming relatively in your boss's eyes, who's not getting assigned these tasks, that person is at a lower point than you are in this range of accomplishment. So for your boss, they perceive a bigger delta. There is literally more to fix with this person. And you might say, well, hold on, Hélène. Like, I am the one who's being useful. I'm the one who's putting in the effort. Why is no one rewarding my productivity by paying attention to me? Why is no one taking care of me when I'm succeeding by society's metrics? I am being productive. Well, the problem is, the more competent you are, the less useful other people can be and feel around you. And unconsciously, that becomes a problem. Because if I can't take care of you and I'm your boss and I don't know how to help you because you've already got it, I no longer have a purpose in what I view as a transactional relationship with you. So because interacting with you feels literally purposeless to me, because I value helping people bridge the gap from 0 to 100, if I perceive you as already being at 100, I no longer derive a sense of unconscious feeling of being helpful towards you. This is why I, as your boss, am going to dedicate my energy towards trying to fix a problem. And the problem is not you. The problem is maybe another employee. But if we're being honest, we know that the problem here is that your boss and this leader is viewing relationships not only as transactional, but viewing the power dynamic as one where they only have power insofar as they can make other people be productive. Not in how they feel, not in their quality of life, not in how well they get along with each other at work, not in the morale of the unit. So now as the boss, because I have this savior fantasy, I have to focus all my energy on the before picture, on my before and after journey. I have to go find the person who is taking up 80% of my mental capacity and effort. I'm going to bitch about it. I'm going to complain about it the whole time. And I'm probably going to complain to that person and to other people about them. But unconsciously, I'm going to love that employee that makes me feel like a good fucking manager because they are keeping me busy. In a society where productivity is the thing we value most, being busy and feeling useful because you are churning your wheels trying to solve the problem of that employee is what's going to feel like it gets rewarded in your brain. Because as soon as you stop and you slow down and you let your potential just be, you're going to feel like a failure. Right? So that is why the boss, the leader, has a personal selfish incentive to not reward you with a break and just give you more work because they're going to pity and they're going to spend their time trying to console this employee that is underperforming, underdeveloping, because it stokes their ego. It boosts their ego, making them feel helpful and useful and giving them something to bitch about. So you get to understand that. That's not necessarily something that you can change, but it is something that you get to be aware of. Some of this is yours to take ownership of. Some of it has nothing to do with you. Now, your boss not only has this internal incentive, but also we have to recognize that society rewards a leader for how well they handle struggle, how well they handle a shitty situation. We tend to value and see the value of a leader when they are being tested. Right? If you think of a leader that's in a chill environment, nothing's going wrong, everything's going really well, everybody's happy, those leaders don't always make headlines. Those aren't the leaders that we give awards to. At least in the military, those weren't the people that got rewarded. The people that got rewarded that took a shitty situation and turned it into a better one. So we tend to only praise people who thrive in chaotic environments. And this is a huge disservice, because what we're saying is, unless you have a problem to solve, you're not a good leader. And unless you create a source of chaos and problem for you to fix, you're not going to get the reward that you think you deserve. So we're not going to give them an award for managing when things are fine and well and everything is equitable and morale is good, because, we're going to say, well, they just had good people on their team. We're not going to give them any credit for managing a good situation. And if they were able to wrangle good out of a very bad situation, that's going to feel a whole lot better for them, for the story. And as the kids say these days, it's good for the plot. Ideally, your manager would, rather than task you with a task, take that energy and train the other employee and actually help them, not just pity them out of work. So the bottom line is, your boss, out of this selfish desire to feel helpful and useful and to view a before and after picture succeed, to keep the productivity going for the company so that they can get the reward of making good out of a bad, chaotic situation, rather than create equity in the workplace and take that time and effort that they are using to pity the employee to actually train them up to be as good as you are, they are just tasking you with additional work and labor. And no wonder, because the system doesn't actually help you out either. In this sad irony, this desire to feel helpful is juxtaposed with this desire to maintain a status quo, which is why it means that we can't afford to slow down our collective productivity so that one person catches up. Because for you to get some slack cut from you means that we might have to deal with a period of inefficiency for a time. We might have to deal with a little lull in how quickly we churn out work, because God forbid we look at things as a team effort and genuinely as a team struggle when it needs to be. We all have to meet that bottom line. So we would rather overburden an individual who in this society historically tends to sacrifice their individual holistic needs for the sake of a company's bottom line. So rather than actually be helpful to the other person, we're going to create this false sense of helpfulness. We're going to feel helpful without actually being helpful to that person. Because real help would look like taking them aside and training them on how to do the job that you are now doing. But that's not going to actually meet the bottom line of productivity. So unfortunately, this cycle keeps incompetent people remaining incompetent, and it's setting up high performers to carry this weight indefinitely. So the only way to solve that is by advocating for yourself. So this is why we find ourselves in a pickle. And this is why people want to know, how do I manage up? Like, how do I manage my boss? How do I help them understand I can't do it anymore? Or this is outside my scope of responsibility. So I would submit to you that, one, we want to do this in a way that is ethical and in integrity, which is why I spent the first half of this podcast helping you understand that there is nuance to individual motivation, collective motivation, and there are setups and systems in place that are actively working against you advocating for yourself. So we start off by giving yourself grace and by understanding that most people walk through this world pretty unconscious of why they do what they do. And in order to understand why they do what they do, they're going to have to slow down. And so I'm going to ask you to do the same thing before you advocate for yourself and your capacity at work. We have to understand what it is that we are actually capable of. And we have to slow down in order to get clear on what that is. So I'm going to give you 4 steps to managing up so that you feel like you can self-advocate at work and alleviate some of this burdening yourself and sacrificing yourself. Because let me tell you, there's nothing sexy about martyrdom for the sake of someone else's paycheck. And the only bottom line that you're supporting is the company's. You're not supporting your own, because your bottom line involves more than just your income. It involves how you show up for your family. It involves how you show up for your health, how you show up for your friends, how you show up in this world when work falls away, who's left behind. So that bottom line of who you are as a person, what you value, what you stand for, is the one we're going to advocate for here. So the first step is going to be getting clear on your purpose and your non-negotiables. Before you open your mouth and advocate, you have to know your why. In my personal fulfillment framework, which has 5 different pillars that start with the letter P, the first 2 are presence, and the second one is purpose. For us to know our why and what our purpose is, we have to first be present to what is. Right? What do I currently have going on? What am I feeling? What is my physical state? What is my emotional state? What has this increased workload done for my capacity in other areas of my life? So this is a chance for you to take an inventory and get clear on, how is this a problem for you that you are being overtasked and that your competence is being punished, right? Why do you want a better work-life balance? Why do you want less of a workload? What specifically, in your words, is being impacted because you are now being asked to do more than what you signed up for? And then ask yourself even further, what actually matters to you, right? Is it having an impact at work? Is it prioritizing your mental health? Is it your personal growth or professional growth? Is it freedom? Do you want to simply have more time and not be working on your laptop at 9 p.m. on a Tuesday because you'd like to actually be spending it with your kids, right? Get very clear and make a list of all of the reasons, whether you call it a journaling session, whether you do this over a few days, whether you do what I do and take a long bath and have, impulsive voice memos recorded. Do whatever you got to do to take stock of what it is that matters most to you and be honest with yourself, right? If you're like, oh shit, I haven't been showing up the way that I want to, don't judge yourself, blame yourself, and beat yourself up for that. Recognize where you're feeling guilty might be something that you actually want to change. So once you figure out what actually matters to you and you've taken this inventory of why you want to advocate for yourself in the first place, why do you want this change? You're going to give yourself this clarity. Now, of course, once you have your whys figured out, you're not necessarily going to communicate all of your personal reasons to your boss as to why you should get a chance, right? We don't want that to sound like whining. We want this to sound like a strategic stewardship of your talent. And so when you communicate your purpose, you're going to think about your impact and how your personal health and potential actually impact the company. The boss is going to want to feel important, right? Remember their ego. So in order to cater to that or translate what is true for you in a language that is understood by them, you might say something like, my purpose is to deliver high quality work without sacrificing my mental health or burning out my creativity. Because when my workload tips past capacity, everyone loses, and I'm not able to show up as well for the clients, for my peers at work, and I'm a less productive employee for the company. That's one way of doing it. Use your own words as always. So that was the first step, getting clear on your purpose and non-negotiables. The second step is making your capacity visible and tangible. So don't expect your boss to read your mind. You have to spell it out with numbers or clear deliverables because, again, they are only seeing one side and one perspective of what is going on with you, right? Maybe all they see is the email they sent you tasking you with this work, and they don't see everything else that you're actually doing behind the scenes. So one of the concepts that I teach in the Self-Expression Academy is using the art of saying no by saying yes. This was actually taught to me by a friend of mine who had to say no to a general once. And this was in the Air Force as an active duty. And the general kept asking for additional projects to be taken on. And this officer realized, we do not have the capacity to do it all. Like, it's not possible. But because this was kind of a high visibility, high stakes meeting, he didn't want to just say no. Right? He wanted to be more tactful, and he wanted to understand the psychology of, like, people want agreement, right? And so we have to find a way to help them know that, hey, I agree with you that this is important. And rather than say no, I'm going to say yes and help you realize what the capacity actually is in this moment. So rather than say no, you would say something like, yes, I think this is a worthwhile project. And right now I'm handling project A, B, and C. To take on project D means either A, B, or C has to pause or be delegated. Here's what I recommend. Or you can pitch it to them as a question and give them buy-in and create a discussion around, hey, I would love to do this. And in order for me to do this, I'm going to have to pull man hours and effort away from this other project or this other task. What are the priorities in your eyes? And which of these two should I prioritize for the next month, 2 months, 6 months, right? So this is not a refusal. This is saying, yes, I want to help. You're managing responsibly. You're basically saying, I love that idea. Great idea, buddy. But I want to be able to manage my capacity. And the capacity means I can only do 2 things and you're asking me to do a third. Which of these 3 needs to go away or be deprioritized so that this third one can happen? Most of the time, your boss doesn't realize that you have 4 things going on, or they don't realize how much time it takes. I've even gone so far as to document how many hours a week each of these projects actually takes. You can even, if not in hour numbers, you can say, like, what are the different tasks or the different processes? The best thing you can do in advocating for yourself is help them gain clarity over what your current situation is and help them intuit that the capacity is less than what they might be assuming right now. However you choose to do that, with an outline, with a spreadsheet, by providing numbers, showing them how involved or what the hurdles are to each task, is going to help support them in understanding why this is not good for the company, because overall the company is going to suffer, or the productivity that they value so much is going to suffer because you're not able to do it all, right? And they know that because unconsciously they know they can't do it all. So make your capacity visible and tangible as the second step. The third step is proposing a solution, not just a complaint. Because you are managing up and you are not begging, you will take all the expertise and knowledge and all of that hypercompetence and put it to good use in coming up with an alternative solution. That alternative solution might be simply, hey, what if we delay this project and start that initiative next quarter? Or, hey, I can prioritize this new project if we push this old project back by 2 weeks. Or, hey, I can loop in our coworker for support on the routine task, and I can put most of my attention on this new special task that you want me to take on by myself. So this solution doesn't have to be, hey, I'm just going to cave and do it. It can be creative. And because it's a creative process, I encourage you to maybe start with an idea, but create a dialogue around what the solution would be so that your manager or boss feels, again, helpful and useful in helping you solve this problem. They're going to want to make it their idea. You're going to know your boss better than I do. You're going to know your job better than I do. So I have a feeling you already have an idea of what the solution might be, whether that's a delay, whether that's a delegation, or whether that's increased collaboration so that things can be taken off your plate. Not just for your comfort, but because you actually care about the outcomes of what this project is going to yield. Now, the fourth step is responding if you get a no or if nothing changes, right? So this is kind of, if the first three steps didn't go the way you hoped, if they ignore you and you have the data to back up that this is not going to work out, or you can show that this priority is going to cost you other priorities. Step 4 is basically dealing with the consequences. So here are your options. If they say no or ignore it or don't seem to understand it, you can restate clearly, right? This might sound like, to clarify, if I keep all of these tasks, I won't hit the standard that we both expect. Are you comfortable with that? Ideally, get that in writing. If you can put that in an email, all the better, right? Or if you didn't get that in email because you communicated that verbally, be sure to send a summary email after that hard conversation to your boss, and include a red receipt if you can, right? We had to do this a lot. It's an art. Covering your butt is tough, but definitely a skill set that you get to develop in a corporate environment. Basically, after every meeting, I would send, my boss an email saying, hey, just to recap, I want to be clear, this is what we discussed, and this is how we're moving forward, and this is the priority you've selected. Keeps everyone on the same page. It also gives them a chance to change their mind after you've sent them in an email format and put black and white what they've said out loud. So if restating it clearly doesn't get any kind of change, your option is always to escalate. So this would be either bringing in HR or a skip level manager or the team, and bringing in greater context. So I know no one loves to escalate, whether you bring in HR, but think of escalation as making the problem no longer just about you, not by making it someone else's problem, but allowing other people to engage in the solution for the problem. So what this might look like is, if you've had this conversation privately with your boss, maybe during a team meeting, asking a question of your peers, of your other coworkers, to reflect and reinforce the point that, hey, what kind of work are you doing and how are you handling this new change? Nothing prevents you from being a leader at a lower level management position. And the way that you can lead is not only by advocating for yourself, but you're actively advocating for the resources of the company and the other members of the team. So when you think about escalating this issue, you're not just doing it for selfish reasons. You are doing it because you give a shit about your life, but also about the lives of everyone else around you. Because again, it's not good for the world if you burn yourself to a crisp. So think of escalation as a way for you to elevate the problem to greater visibility, not just to punish your boss, but specifically to help get more eyes on the problem so that a greater solution can be found. If all of this fails, the company's not going to do anything, right? Your boss wants to, be someone who works 100 hours a week, doesn't care about their family, so they expect that of everyone else around them. I worked for those bosses. It was a pain. Let them be miserable. Their misery does not have to trickle down to your misery, which is why the third recommendation is adjusting your own output to intentionally set the natural limit of what you're capable of. What does this mean? Don't save the sinking ship. Do not save them by secretly working nights. Do not compromise on the things that were non-negotiable to you. If they won't change their request to meet your capacity, let your capacity remain what it is. You've done a due diligence of letting them know what your capacity is. You've told them exactly what the consequences are going to be to the company and to the workload if this happens. Now, your last option, if they won't respond to any of that communication, is to let the workload communicate it for them. By that, I mean, if something has to drop, if you said, hey, I can't handle project A, B, and C because you've added on project D, let project A, B, and C suffer. Let something drop publicly if you must. Let you hold integrity to your word and to what you know your capacity to be by being honest with yourself and with the consequences of the natural world. If you can only do so much, do not ask yourself to do more for the sake of people who did not listen to you and who did not take into consideration your capacity, the capacity of the company, or the resources and equity that every work environment deserves to be considered of. This aspect of self-advocacy and managing up matters because if you never show your boundaries, they will never learn them. Moreover, they will keep repeating that problem with other coworkers. I guarantee you are not the only one suffering under this kind of leadership at this kind of organization. And some people might not be ill-intentioned. Most people are not trying to be bad bosses. Remember, we are all trying to feel useful and helpful. We just don't always have the same definition of what that help should look like. And so the purpose of managing up, of advocating for not just your competence, but your capacity, is so that people can redefine what help actually should look like for the current context. And you are helping make clear what the context actually is, not just what they think it is in this aspirational before and after picture. So if you always over-deliver, they will build bigger budgets and timelines around your martyrdom. And if you don't teach people how to treat you, they will keep draining you dry. So teach them how to treat you by treating yourself, your boundaries, your capacity with the self-respect that you would like them to respect. And if they don't respect them, that doesn't mean you start disrespecting yourself. That means you uphold them even harder. And that means at some point you decide, going back to your purpose and your non-negotiables, what is your ultimate end goal? Right? Is it worth you staying in this job and making this paycheck and having your boss be mad at you so that you can support the life that you're living with your family? Or do you want most of your fulfillment to come from this job, and because your boss is being mean to you, you don't feel fulfilled and it's time to look for another job? So depending on your purpose and what your current resources are, it's going to determine how far this conclusion takes you. You get to reclaim your power when you own your purpose and guard your capacity like it's precious, because it is. Managing up is how you stop being a productivity machine and start being seen as the human powerhouse that you actually are. So to summarize, the 4 ways that you manage up is first by getting clear on your purpose and your non-negotiables, then getting clear on what the capacity versus the workload is, bringing a solution to the table, and then finally letting the chips fall where they may, escalating if you need to, or respecting your own boundaries because you deserve to. This episode is hopefully your permission to stop martyring yourself. Sometimes the boldest move is not to fix everything. Sometimes it is to let things fall apart so that something new can grow in its place. Your competence is a gift. Stop letting it be an excuse to drain you dry. It is time to reclaim your power, your freedom, your time, and remind them that you are a human, not a productivity machine. You will inspire others just by virtue of advocating for yourself and emulating the kind of work that you want to see in the world, which is one that comes from a place of holistic fulfillment and not just dying for the sake of a capitalistic owner. If you've got something from this episode, please share it or write in the comments what your biggest takeaway was. Thank you very much for listening. This has been What the Hélène? I'm Hélène, and I'll see you in the next episode.